Welcome back to Chaz's No Bullshit Reptile Advice. Let's get this train back on track. We went a bit off the rails yesterday. Politics is dangerous. There's a saying, never talk politics with friends or family. It's dangerous stuff. Everybody's going to have an opinion about the way that this hobby goes. And my opinion is based upon being a trader, not necessarily just being a hobbyist anymore. And some of the things that I see truly infuriate me. So, you know, if I offended anybody with my language yesterday, I apologise. But I feel very, very strongly about things. And when I can see that there's either a lack of common sense or applied thought, that rattles me and causes me to speak out, because that's my nature. I'm northern, I'm brash and rude. So, yeah, that's it. But let's get back to normal service. Today's question comes from Mac D. Hi Chaz, in one of your last videos I've asked about any advice for potential breeders, and it touches on what you mentioned in this video, which is that I'm not interested in creating a new rare supermorph, but more interested in breeding snakes that are rare in the hobby. I've been keeping snakes for around 4 years, and a year ago I had the opportunity to get hold of a pair of giant Madagascan hognoses. But I've skipped on it. Mate, what have you done? I've never intended to breed, but now, courtesy of hindsight, I'm kicking myself. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Cause you said slowly but surely we might end up with next to nothing when it comes to diversity, and that's sad. So, any pointers to someone who wants to get into breeding? Any potential pitfalls and mistakes to avoid? You know, I wish I knew that when I started type stuff. Cheers. Mac D. Right. Yeah, okay. It's a good one. It's a good one. It gets us back on track. So I don't want to limit it to just breeding snakes, because it can't just be a snake channel. I mean, that's where most of my experience lies, but it can't just be a snake channel. We've got to refer this. And I think the biggest problem area traditionally when people walk into the world of breeding with their eyes closed is with bearded dragons. Shops, unfortunately, sell them as pairs, because bearded dragons get lonely and they need a cage mate. Said nobody with a brain, ever. And invariably, the odds are, if a certain proportion of them end up being pairs, they're going to start shagging and producing eggs. The fact, we'll lay aside the fact that the female will get hammered, raped from here to kingdom come, forced to lay 5 and 6 litres of eggs a year. It's the lack of infrastructure and the lack of planning that led to the exponential breeding of beardies, the decay in their prices, and people swapping them for half a Snickers and a pint of lager down the pub. It made it where they would give away pets, where to be able to keep them correctly, and we would say, well, it's going to cost you £250, £300 to set up a bearded dragon correctly. People will go, fuck that, I paid a £5 for it, I got given it, I saw it on Gumtree. They don't take them seriously, they are discarded, and their value is degraded. So if it was about the responsible breeding of any animal, we can take it to snakes, is infrastructure. You know that potentially you're going to be producing babies. Where will those babies go? Invariably, if you're going to be a breeder that sells them privately, you will have them for a good length of time. Even if you produce them with the intent of selling them wholesale to shops, wholesalers or dealers, you will still be expected more than likely to get them feeding regularly on defrost first, which means that there's probably, I'd say, an 8 to 12 week delay for most of the common species that you would breed snake wise, before they could then be offloaded wholesale, and even longer, you know, up to 6 months, maybe even a year for a private breeder wanting to sell them individually. Which style of selling you do is your choice. Obviously there's pitfalls to both. There's the time, cost, and all the rest of it from making extra money by keeping them and selling them one at a time. Or you sell them all at once for far less money, but then you've saved all the time. So I suppose you have to decide what's the premium, money or time. For me, it's nearly always time. There's not enough of it. Feels like if there was 48 hours in a day, I'd still struggle sometimes. So that's your choice to make, but infrastructure is key. Infrastructure's got to be laid out. So we get people that they will come in over the course of like the last 2-3 years. They've maybe bought some snakes, whether them be yearlings or babies. They've got them up to size. They want to look at breeding them. So the steps that we would then take them through. Right. Have you got a heat strip or a couple of heat strips and a thermostat to control that heat strip, so that you can then put your baby neonatal tubs to house your animals separately to be able to raise them? We can co-house the snakes when they're first born and allow them to shed, because we keep them in basically a steam box. Nearly all snakes will drop into a shed and get shut of that egg skin straight away, and then once they're shed off, generally we'll sex them. They then go in their individual tubs with their feeding charts, so we know where we are, and we can keep track of who's successful, who's struggling, and who is probably not going to make it. And you need to make sure that infrastructure is in place. If there's the potential for a fair few, or you really are quite taking this seriously, does that heat strip then need to be extrapolated out into being a baby rack, where there might be multiple levels with multiple heat strips, a couple of stats to run it, and then you've got your boxes lined up. Have you got adequate boxes? Have you got adequate water bowls? Have you got adequate little caves or hides? This is all infrastructure. It's the shit people don't think of. And then all of a sudden, because they're not prepared, they get the babies, or the eggs are in the incubator, and they're like, shit, I've not done anything. And you end up costing yourself a fortune in one hit. Now, you're going to spend that money anyway, but it'd be better to forward plan and have got it bit by bit over the preceding months leading up to breeding or attempted breedings, so that you've got it in place, and it doesn't hit you quite as hard all at once then. So I think that would be a better way to go. And stupid things like the little water bowls, the hides, the boxes, it adds up. Even 4 litre really useful boxes, if you were going to use them, they're something like $5 or $6.99 now. Well, if you need for a corn and you wanted to keep them for 6 months or so, how many do you need? 18, 20? You know, so that's 130 quid in boxes. We've not even put water bowls in them yet. We haven't bought the thermostats or the heat strips. You see where I'm going with this? It's a more expensive and more involving process than people give it credit for. It's not just a case of slapping 2 snakes together and thinking, yeah, fuck it, let's just have some babies. Don't work that way. So infrastructure is key. Once you've got the infrastructure in place, incubation. Is it incubation or is it gestation? So infinitely easier boa constrictors. They're live bearers. The women do all the work for you. The female boas, they do it all. Poor buggers, sat gestating for 105 days after their ovulation, and more than likely don't eat. So the impact on the girl is far higher, but they do the work for you. The babies pop out. Otherwise, with most the colubrids and the pythons, their eggs, we're incubating them in an incubator. What incubator have you got? How have you set it up? Have you dummy run it? Have you set it? Are we happy that it's holding humidity? Are we happy that it's holding temperature? Is it accurate enough? Have you made your own? Do you intend to make your own? Have you even begun to get the parts together to build your own? These are all questions that you need to ask yourself. Am I clear on what the incubation temperature is? Am I clear on what the medium that I need to use and the moisture levels of it are for the species that I intend to incubate? What is the incubation duration? So they're all tick questions. Do you have somewhere to sell the babies? Probably key question. People produce stuff same way that they have litters of staffies and French bulldogs and think that there's a never-ending pool of people that always want to buy them, and that's why the rescue centres are absolutely chock-a-block with them. They're overbred, mass-produced. Bearded dragons are the same. Have you got a market for what you intend to produce? So you're on about breeding maybe rarer stuff, more select stuff. So MACD, this doesn't necessarily strictly apply to you. It's more of a general overview. On the rare snakes, fuck yeah, go for it, because diversity is knackered. We need as much as we can get. But when it comes to breeding acumen and experience, you might find certain species more trickier than others to get going. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. But you should be very respectful of where they're from and try to mimic their natural rhythms. But have you got a market for the animals that you're going to sell? If it's beardies, if it's leopard geckos, whatever else, you're more than likely going to be looking at a wholesaler or trader. You don't want to be sat on beardies forever in a day. Baby beardies beat the shit out of one another. There's hierarchies formed, and the dominant one will go around and chew the tails and toes and everything off its cage mates. That is what will happen. I've seen it 100 times. And do you know what? I used to do it. Shock horror. Part of this hobby is you develop over time, and some of the practices that I learned or that I did when I was first owning a reptile shop, I have said in the past and I will say again, would turn my hair even more white than it already is. We learn, we develop, we adapt, we change, or at least we're supposed to. So I speak from experience, where you chuck your locusts in, you chuck your crickets in, you're feeding them well, you want to give them loads to eat, feeding frenzy ensues. Oh, that's moving, I'm just going to grab it. Oh shit, it's me brother's leg. Oh, never mind, it's quite tasty, I'll have it anyway. That's kind of what happens. So, with beardies, where are you going to put 25 babies? Where are you going to put them? It is not naturalistic to have a full litter living in a single viv. Shops that still do it now are dinosaurs. They need to knock it off, because people walk into a shop and infer from what they are seeing that it's okay, and it isn't. It isn't. And beardies are probably the biggest problem that with regards to that, and the dominance issues, where you get one that just goes whoa and swells up, and everybody else is shitting themselves and hiding underneath their caves because they don't get a look in and they're scared of getting beaten the shit out of by the big one. So breeding's a responsibility. Breeding shouldn't be taken lightly. If you're going to be breeding slightly more select species, great, superb. That's what we want, that's what we need, and they're only rare because the Royals and the Corns finished them off. So if we're talking about tricolour kings, if we're talking about maybe certain Pituophis or other stuff, then you shouldn't really find them too much of a challenge. Give them a good winter, they're either montane or they're northern, and that should be enough to be able to bring them round and get them sorted. With regards to maybe Leohetrodon, which are the Madagascan giant hognose, I mean, they didn't prove to be too tricky for us to breed. They bred in the shop with minimal intervention. Once they were up to size and condition, they were off and running. So I think that you'd probably be okay there. I mean, you're talking Madagascar off the coast of Africa, you know, relatively stable, maybe a bit of a winter cooling. They just kicked in and laid those eggs. And that was Madagascarensis we bred, not Gayi or what's the other one, Modestus. But I can't imagine that they'd be any more difficult. So yeah, if you get the option for stuff like the Leohetrodon, yeah, don't pass it up, because it is getting to the point now is when you're going to see them again. I got offered black pine snakes earlier this year and had a shit fit at the fact that I'd even been offered to fucking get it. Because I knew that offering them from the shop would be of huge kudos to snakes and adders. Got offered olive pythons, jumped on them. See, this isn't about me keeping them privately, it's about giving people the opportunity to be able to have them. I can make sure that they're good quality, and obviously I profit from it. I'm a business, I'm not going to hide the fact. But my business and my business model, and Paul's business model, is working on the weird and the wonderful, the oddball, the left field. That's what we promote, that's what we like, and what we'll continue to do. And believe me, if I got offered some Leohetrodon that were in good nick as adults, I would jump all over them. So yeah, maybe that was a bit of a cock up on your behalf. But they're my theories of breeding infrastructure. What do I know now, right? They don't all feed, they don't all survive. You've got to be prepared for animals dying. It happens. You can't save them all. A certain proportion of some litters, such as king cobras, are born with genetic deficiencies, with the sole idea that they provide nutrition to their litter mates. So you can't save everyone, and some people are guilty of trying to save lost causes that cause the owner's perpetual grief throughout their life, which is why I have a major problem with people, not mentioning any names, Jay Brewer, cutting open the eggs, fish hooking a baby out. What is it? See, time was, and what I was always told when we were breeding, when I was younger, if they don't hatch out, they weren't meant to hatch. I think that's a salient point. If nature has decided this animal is not supposed to live, it's not supposed to live. It's not crawled out of that egg for a reason. We've got genetic abominations like scaleless snakes. Royal pythons being born with no heat pits. What the fuck? And if a snake's born without an egg tooth, can't get out of its egg, good. Don't pull it out of its egg. It's not cruel. It's what nature's intended. Nature is an evil bitch when she wants to be. Truly cruel. So the fact that you've produced something and you want to have a reputation for producing healthy animals that crawled out of their egg under their own steam, that were virile and functioning and successful babies, then don't pull your babies, don't cut your eggs. It's barbaric, horrible, stressful for the neonate, and I don't approve of it at all. And you're welcome to argue, and I will tell you to shut the fuck up. It's cruel. You don't need to do it. And nature's filter for stopping deficiencies, kinks, congenital defects, enlarged heart, shrunken heart, enlarged kidney, no liver, one eye, hair, lip, all this sort of stuff, that filter's gone because you cut it open. And then because it's got a super sun tiger pastel, shit the bed, polka dot, fancy, I've got to keep it even though it's not quite right. Then I might get fed up with it and sell it on someone else, and that someone else then might try breeding it because they're avaricious and they're after the money, even though it's not right and this animal's never been right, but we'll have a go at breeding it anyway. And so the genetic wormhole continues. So no, I don't approve of cutting, I don't approve of pulling. To show it on your videos is irresponsible, promotes the wrong idea, and for me it's exceedingly distasteful. I don't approve of it at all. I hope that's of use. Breeding is wonderful. Breeding, getting those babies out, when you see them crawling out, it is magical. And that's whether it's a leopard gecko or a black-headed python. It makes no difference. It's one of the most fantastic feelings. You have brought forth new life. Your husbandry has got animals to a condition where they will breed. Nature has decided that these babies are strong enough to crawl free of their incubation chamber, the egg, breathe air and clear their lungs of all the amniotic fluid, and set forth into the world. What a magical feeling. And like I say, it doesn't matter whether it's a beardie, whether it's a, God knows, whatever, rhinoceros, iguana. To have done it, to have seen it, to have felt it, there is no feeling like it. And I hope that everybody watching this has the opportunity one day to have bred something, and it doesn't matter what it is, to have seen that and seen the magic of it and feel responsible for it and watch it grow and watch it gain weight is so wonderful. But do put that decision through the filter of, am I doing the best I can by the animal? Is it right? Are there too many of them? Have I got a market for what I produce? See, for me, whatever I breed, yeah, I've got a market for it, I've got a shop. So I have the infrastructure in place, the racking systems in place, I have everything there ready to facilitate me producing babies. The layman sat at home hasn't. And you are encumbered, if you're going to breed stuff, to set up some form of infrastructure to allow you to do this properly. If you're not going to do it properly, don't bother, leave it to people that will, because that's where our bad reputation comes from. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. Go for it. Set yourself up properly. Be responsible with it. Check your market. And enjoy your hobby. Breeding isn't for everybody. It is for some. If it's for you, go for it. Just do it right. And if it's not, equally cool. Just keep them as pets. You think there's enough of them. I don't want to contribute to producing anymore. That's your choice. Nothing wrong. There's different ways to skin a cat. I'm not going to sit here and say you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to do the other. Your hobby's your hobby. You decide what you want to do. It's fine. Just as long as it's done responsibly and you can show that there's been a clear thought process to you undertaking this project, then nobody can tell you otherwise. It's your entitlement. But responsibility is key. So I hope that was useful, and we'll see you again soon.